Hello and welcome to this trial presentation on how the coronavirus works and how the vaccines work. On the left you can see a couple of actual SARS virus particles, and on the right you can see the two modern mRNA vaccines, one from Moderna and one from BioNTech. In this presentation I hope to explain how both of these work and in a very simple way. So actually you have heard the word mRNA in mRNA vaccine. What is mRNA? mRNA is called messenger RNA, and it really is an instruction set in biology that tells a biological cell what to do. It is really nothing else, nothing other than a sort of IKEA manual that tells the cell how to build things and how to assemble them. And this is not in any way I'm not lying to you in any way. An mRNA molecule is really a string of instructions that says take these molecules, assemble them together, and this is what you need to do with them. And the interesting thing is this is sort of a joke mRNA IKEA-like assembly instruction for the coronavirus, where you can see that it takes lots of molecules, assembles them into a bunch of spikes, and which are the spiky things, and then there is the red blob, which is the virus body, and these are assembled together to form a fully functional coronavirus. Very interestingly, you see that this instruction manual says that to assemble a coronavirus, you need to build the spikes, you need to build the virus body, and you need to build an actual copy of the corona instruction manual. So this is sort of recursive. The instructions contains instructions to build the instructions. So what does it look like? This is the human cell. In the middle there's the friendly IKEA guy, and he's called the ribosome. And the ribosome is the thing in cells that assembles molecules based on these mRNA instructions. And on the right we can see a fully formed coronavirus, within there the instruction manual for building yet another coronavirus. Now we see that the virus tries to merge with the cell, and it succeeds in injecting the coronavirus instruction manual into the human cell. So the coronavirus has successfully infected this human cell. Now the little ribosome guy gets to work, and he follows the instructions that are in the mRNA, and the instructions tell him to build a lot of virus components and virus instruction manuals. And an important insight here is the mRNA coronavirus manual contains instructions to make the whole virus, including a new copy of the instruction manual. And in this way the virus literally manages to go viral, because it contains instructions to make a complete copy of itself, including the instructions to make itself. Now this virus has now successfully done its work within the cell, and it's full of virus components. Next up, all these virus components escape from the cell. So this single cell in this depiction has made 8 new copies of the coronavirus. And you can see the ribosome guy is not that happy, because the cell has now been used to create lots of viruses which have escaped the cell, ready to infect other cells. And that's what they go on to do. All the virus particles that have just been created, they go out to other human cells and infect them as well. And they make a ton of new copies of the virus. And I try to give an impression here that it's a lot of copies of the virus, but the actual virus numbers is in the millions of trillions. So the most infected people can create like 1 trillion copies of the virus in 1 gram of material. So it is the numbers of virus copies that are generated are just stupendous. And you can see how that happens, because one cell creates a whole bunch of new coronaviruses, and those coronaviruses infect yet more cells, and these cells keep on copying and making more and more and more copies of the coronavirus. Then our whole body is filled with coronavirus particles, and we don't feel very well, and we might get very sick. And this takes quite some time. But then our immune system springs into action. It has been notified, it notices that these cells are behaving weirdly, but our antibodies, our immune system has antibodies to neutralize viruses. But these antibodies, and you can see that in red they have this sort of little hole in them, but you can see the hole that they have does not have a shape that fits on the coronavirus, because that's how the antibodies work. They have shapes that are actually more complicated than this one, and that shape needs to fit on top of a virus in order to neutralize it. Our antibodies are sort of evolved within our bodies, and our immune system has a sort of zoo where it builds new antibodies that fit better on the intruder. So it takes some time. It takes 9 days, more or less. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but that's the sort of time period you need to think about. And then there are antibodies that have the exact shape that you can see, so that the antibody fits on the cell. And in this case, you see that the coronavirus has 8 of these spikes sticking out of it, and the official name for these spikes is spike. So they are really spiky spikes. And the antibodies evolve until they fit really well on the spike. And once that is done, our body is filled with antibodies that can fit on the cell, and it does not end well for the cell. These are very good virus-destroying machines, and they can either destroy the virus directly or indirectly, but you don't want to get on the wrong side of these antibodies. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, it's wonderful that our immune system does this, and we should be tremendously grateful, but it takes a number of days before the immune system gets to work, and during those days, things might go wrong in a very bad way. So wouldn't it be great if we could teach our immune system about the spike before we get infected with the virus, before we get ill? And of course, this is exactly what the vaccines try to do. Now we get to the vaccine part. And this will look very familiar. We still have an instruction manual. So we used to have the virus instruction manual, and now we have a far smaller manual called the Corona Spike instruction manual. But it's still very much the same. But instead of assembling a whole virus, including the virus body and the copying instruction, this spike manual only contains instructions for creating lots and lots and lots of copies of only the spike. So this is around 10% of the virus instruction manual is left, and it's only set here to create spikes. So this is the instruction manual, and we would want to get ourselves to execute that. How does it work? The corona vaccine, we take this manual, the mRNA instruction manual, which we can generate in our laboratories, and we put it inside a small lipid nanoparticle, and we inject that into the human body. And the key insight here is that this small corona spike instruction manual does not contain instructions to create yet more instruction manuals. And it does not contain instructions to create a whole virus. So you inject this thing once, and it does its thing once to create a lot of spikes. This is again what the infection looks like. This is the small lipid nanoparticle, and this is like a little drop of fat actually with these mRNA instructions in there. And these, when we inject these actually infect a number of your cells. And again, Mr. Ribosome gets to work to execute the mRNA instruction manual, just like with the actual virus, and it's actually useful. So it gets to work, and it builds a ton of these spikes. But notably, it does not build the whole virus, it only builds these spiky things. And then, similarly to before, the immune system springs into action. It sees all these spikes. The immune system has been alerted that something is wrong, because the cell notices that it is building IKEA stuff that it should not be building, and it sends out an alarm signal. So our immune system gets to work, and it sees all these spikes. And again, like before, the antibodies are not yet ready for the spike. They don't have the right shape, they don't have the right form. So again, it takes our bodies in the order of 9 days to figure out a way to deal with these spikes. But our immune system gets to work, and crucially, during these 9 days, we are not actually getting ill, because we do not have an exponentially multiplying virus inside us. We only have a bunch of spikes. So that means that the immune system can get to work while we just maybe feel a little bit of a fever one day. We don't feel entirely nice for one day or maybe 2 days. But that's our immune system getting to work. That is us earning our immunity. And after 9 days or so, the immune system has evolved so that it knows the shape of the spike, and there are now antibodies that fit very well on this spike. And this is all great news because it happened while we were just doing our normal thing and not being super ill. But now these antibodies hang around and they know the shape of the spike. So maybe, let's say, a few days later, we actually get close, we get into contact with someone that's infected with the coronavirus, and we get a little bit of this coronavirus inside our bodies, and it's a very brief story. Because the antibodies, they are ready. They know the shape of the spike, and they immediately neutralize the virus. And it's ready. It does its thing, and boom, the virus is dead. And the nice thing is, we probably won't even notice. This is so automatic, this happens so quickly, that once immunized with the vaccine, our immune system knows exactly what to do with the virus, and we are resistant against it. We are immune without ever having fallen ill. And that is how the modern mRNA vaccines work, by replicating a tiny part of the virus, but crucially not the parts of the virus that make yet more copies of the virus. We only teach our body to make these spike proteins, and our bodies then learn from these spike proteins how to protect ourselves. Thank you.